This training video is brought to you by K-Alliance. K-Alliance provides high-quality instructor-led training videos for desktop, IT, and soft skills. Visit us online at www.kalliance.com to sign up for your free 7-day trial. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching, and we hope you learned something new. Real videos, real learning, real success.
In this demonstration, we're going to take a look at the capability in group policy to control application installations and the use of applications. As we've talked about, there's two ways of doing this. You can get at both of these ways inside of a GPO. The first way is software restriction policies, and the second, application control policies. And so we're going to call this application restrictions. Link it to the domain, right-click and edit that policy. Okay, now you can, you're typically going to do this under computers. There are software restriction policies under users, but I'm probably going to do this here. And honestly, the only reason to use the software restriction policies at this point would be in a mixed environment. So if you have any systems that are older than Windows 7, you will have to use software restriction policies, but as we've talked about, they are not as capable as the application control policies or app locker policies. So it's much easier with app locker to whitelist applications as opposed to blacklist. That gives you a whole lot more control. It's just more flexible because of the new publisher rule. So we're not going to define these. We'll show it briefly here. You're going to start with new security policy. The security level by default is unrestricted. Okay, so everything's allowed, and then you go in and configure rules to enforce. So anything that's currently installed in the Windows directory, the program files directory will work, and you right-click and you can create additional rules. The best rule is probably the hash rule. You point at an executable, it creates a hash off of that executable and will prevent anybody from using that particular file. If you get a new version of the file, unfortunately, you would need a new hash. You can do a hash rule kind of as a primary with a path rule as a backup. The order of priority is from top to bottom on this list. So even though there's a path rule that says allow everything in the program files directory, if you create a hash rule that disables, say, iTunes, the hash rule would beat the path rule. Okay, and so you can use those software restriction policies if necessary. Otherwise, in a Windows 7 only scenario, we want to use application control policies, otherwise known as app locker. All right, these are supported on Windows 7 Enterprise and Ultimate, Windows 8, and they have a lot of flexibility. They're also they're also supported on the servers. First thing, rule enforcement. You have the option to enforce or not enforce. Now, I wouldn't configure this until you've gone and configured the rules, but we'll go ahead and do it here in an example. Say enforce or audit only. And so that was one of the options to be able to test the enforcement of these rules. So we'll mark it as an enforced. You can click on executable rules, and we go here to the executable rules area. Now, there's nothing there, so I'm going to right-click and create a new rule. We'll go through the process of doing that. These rules are going to be user-based. Now, by default, any rule you create is applied to the everyone group. Okay? But I can create a rule, choose to deny, and then choose which users. So maybe it's just domain users or a particular department or whatnot. We'll leave it at everyone for our purposes. We'll hit next, and then we've got three types of rules: publisher, path, and file hash. Now, these two work exactly the same as previous versions with one exception. Software restriction policies with one exception. The path, you can't any longer do a registry path. You used to be able to do that. But publisher is far more flexible because I can hit next, hit browse. I then have to locate the executable that I'm trying to prevent. Now, I'm limited here as to the executables that I have, so we'll just use Internet Explorer for an example. But then it reads the information out of the digital signature on the file. So see, with a hash rule, you're pointing at an executable, and then it's going to build a hash based off of that file. If anything about that file changes, like a new version, you got to get a new hash. Well, the problem is some of these files, some of these programs, like for instance iTunes, they have a new version every couple of weeks. And so, I mean, that's an administrative nightmare. Well, the publisher rule prevents that. So I can just kind of move the slider and I say, look, if the product, and just let's pretend, if the product is iTunes, then we want to block it, or if the file name, I don't really care what the version is, I want to block it. Maybe I want to block everything from a particular publisher. All right, and so you can choose to do that. You get a lot of different flexibilities. You can use custom values, and then you can just change the versions of them. So you really have a whole lot more control with the application or with the app locker policies. We can make an exception. So I say except for this, and then I put in a path. So, for those people that may know, maybe they can run a program out of a particular folder or something, or maybe blocking scripts, something like that. So just go ahead, create the rule that enforces it. Now, it's going to ask me to create default rules. The default rules are important, and so I'll say yes, because the default rules will allow the everything in the program files, everything in the Windows folder to actually run. Now, technically, we're right back to blacklisting. So I'm going to allow everything except those particular things that I deny. And that's fine. There is an alternative. Okay? The alternative is to say, well, no, you know what? I will allow all files in the Windows folder. I'm not going to allow all files in the program files directory, though. Instead, I'm going to automatically generate rules. Now, the difference is the automatically generate rules will scan my current program files folder, and it will produce rules for me. Okay? But these will be rules that will explicitly allow certain things. So for instance, anything for the Microsoft Windows operating system, anything for Internet Explorer, it's allowed because it was in my program files directory. Now what that means is essentially you need a test system. You can create a system that has software installed on it. This is what I want on every system. And then I use that as kind of a basis, a template, if you will, for the policy. I point it at the program files directory. And what you get are explicit rules for all the software. So you'll get rules for Office, for Adobe, for Apple products, or whatever you want. Remember, in App Locker, everything is implicitly denied. So basically, if there's not a rule that allows it, it's denied. And so in this case, we're whitelisting applications. We're blocking everything, and only the things that I have specifically created rules for will actually be allowed. And so it's just kind of a different way of thinking about it, and I'm just much easier, more control over the whole process. Now I'm going to get rid of these. I don't need to actually implement that. I don't want to block Internet Explorer, but that gives us an example just of the application control policies. And notice I can now control Windows installer files. I can create rules for scripts, rules for packaged apps, which would apply to Windows 8 machines. And so I have the ability to control really all different types of software on the system. So carefully plan those out. Probably use the audit-only capability to test the application of those policies, but those can be very useful in an Active Directory environment.
We hope you enjoyed this preview video. Please click on the like button below if you did, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to visit us at www.kalliance.com to sign up for your free 7-day trial today. You could learn a lot in a week.